Lewis, last time we left off talking about rings, special mementos, road trips, and awkward car conversations.
It was a pretty good episode, I think.
It was. It's a great one. And here's the question I want to ask us today, because we covered the early years, the identity years. So what happens when that same kid you were praying over as a baby is suddenly 18, packing up a car, and driving away from your house?
Wow. And when you really think about it that way, it hits different because then you actually start to picture it.
Yeah, that's right. It does, because all that foundation we talked about last time, it's not the finish line. It's just the runway. And today, we're talking about the launch.
We're going to talk about the moment where all that seed planting either takes root and grows into something that stands on its own or it doesn't. And so we're going to finish the journey together. We're going to look at milestones 5 through 7.
Welcome to Equipped for Impact, the podcast designed to assist Christian parents, leaders, and educators to raise up the next generation to stand firm in their faith and influence the world for Christ. We're your hosts. I'm Nate.
And I'm Lewis.
And we are glad you're here with us today. And if you haven't listened to part 1 of this 2-part series, pause right now and go back and make sure you grab part 1, because what we're talking about is the milestones of faith that you walk through with your child, from baby dedication all the way through to the launch that we're talking about today. Last week, we covered those first 4, the baby dedication, the purity conversation, that transition into adolescence, and all of those build the foundation to what we're talking about today.
And all of this is built on a framework that comes from Timothy Paul Jones and Brian Haynes, and it's built around this idea that spiritual formation happens through intentional milestones, not by accident. And I think you did some research on this, and this is where you kind of got this information from, right?
Yeah. So Timothy Paul Jones has this book, and we're going to link to it in the show notes. It's linked in last week's episode as well, and it's a family discipleship or family ministry handbook is his book, and he's gotten a lot of other family-focused discipleship books. So Timothy Paul Jones is a great resource, and he's the one that pointed to Brian Hayes, and there's a website, legacymilestones.com. Again, link in the show notes for you. And those are just kind of the place that we're pulling this idea from. And it's that whole framework where you're walking through these different milestones where your child's making the transition into each of these, and you can be intentional about what they need at each step along the way. So the last week we already talked about, we covered those first couple, and so now we're moving into those launch years. So Lewis, let's kick us off. This is milestone 5. Kick us off with that one. What does this one look like?
Yeah, and so if you're like me, I am parenting a 15-year-old right now, and so milestone 5 really speaks to me, which is that passage to adulthood. And Nate, I think this is one of the most overlooked milestones on this entire list because it doesn't get the attention that maybe like graduation does, or maybe like, the early years, baby dedication, baptism, things like that.
Yeah, and I think it might be a cultural thing, don't you think? Because it's like the graduation, like that's a typical milestone. You have a big graduation ceremony and everybody knows, but like, and not to go off on a rabbit trail, it's almost like our culture has extended adolescence. And so if you look at some research now, it almost like goes all the way out into your mid to late 20s.
I've seen that.
Like some of that's based on brain research, right? Your prefrontal cortex is not fully formed until like 23, 24, something like that. But in previous, generations, when you were 15, 16, like you were considered an adult and you were expected to start acting like an adult. You may still be going to college or doing whatever, but like at that stage, late high school or middle of high school, you were considered a man or a woman, and so you had higher expectations. And so that's why this milestone is kind of in this stage. You've made that transition into adolescence. You've gone through puberty. Now you're an adult. So what kind of comes with this? What does it look like for a teenager who really should start taking on some of those adult responsibilities?
One of the things to understand here is that the goal here is really huge, right? It's about grounding your teenager in foundational theology and practical life skills, right? It's both halves there matter, right? Because you can raise a teenager who knows sound doctrine, but they can't balance a checkbook. But you can also raise a teenager who's very financially savvy or maybe tech savvy or maybe even a hard worker with their hands, but they don't have a clue about what they actually believe and why. And the truth is that you need both of those legs to stand on.
Yeah, so that's exactly where we're going with this, right? The practice here is working through not only core Christian doctrines, but also adult competencies. There's a great book, 50 Things
Your Child, teach your kids before they leave
the home. We'll link to it in the show notes because we probably just butchered the title. But
great book, by the way.
It is a really good book, and it goes through it. It literally is like sections of a checklist of 50 things you should be able to teach your child. It goes everything from changing oil or changing your tire, right, which is an important like life skill. Balancing a checkbook, but then it's also got things like being a good host, like being able to welcome people into the house and, let me take your coat and do you need a glass of water? Like it's things like that. And so what we want to see here is we want to see, financial stewardship and serving others and personal responsibility. Like those are all things that you need to be able to teach your child as they make this transition into adulthood.
And I actually recently taught my child how to change a tire on a car. So
was it in an emergency situation?
In an emergency situation, here is your AAA card. Take it out, call this number, and wait 2 to 3 hours.
Only 2 to 3 hours?
Sometimes.
Instead of changing their own tire?
In an emergency situation, call this number on the back of your AAA card.
Oh my goodness. So here's the question though. Do either of you got 2 cars, right, in the family? Do either of them have a spare tire?
They do, huh? Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, they both should. We've never, praise God, we've never had to actually use the spare tire to like do anything with normally.
Because you just call AAA.
Well, not always. Sometimes when we've had flat tires like nearby, we can, or our tire pressure gauge is low, we can take it to Cheap Plug, a tire company here locally in our city that's owned by one of the parents that attends our school.
Okay.
They take really good care of us there.
Look at that. Yep.
So not AAA, but close to it.
It is not AAA. I have had to change my own tire on the side of the road, and it was not fun.
No, I can imagine.
Especially with it's a 1-lane road or 2-lane road and cars are zipping past you. And anyway,
You want me to teach you the same thing I taught my daughter this past weekend?
About calling AAA?
Grab this AAA card, call this number, and wait 2 to 3 hours.
I didn't have to wait 2 to 3 hours, though.
But this is where, like, seriously, things that we've talked about before. So you'll remember an episode that we did probably earlier this year about the 3 buckets framework, and it fits really naturally. So if you're a longtime listener, you've heard us talk about the give, save, and spend.
Yep.
And this is a season to actually hand that framework to your teenager and let them practice it with real stakes. So maybe they have a part-time job, right? Maybe they have their first checking account. Now they're making real decisions with real money.
Yeah. It's not theoretical. You're not playing Monopoly. Although that is a great game to learn some of these skills.
That is
low risk, but there's real consequences. You spend all of that money on something that you want. Well, now you don't have the money to buy something else that you need later.
Yeah.
It's things like that, and it's teaching them to be a good steward of what God has given them.
Yeah.
And then there's the doctrinal side of things, right? This is where you can make sure that they can answer big questions. What do you believe about who God is? What do you believe about Scripture? What do you believe about salvation? This is where, again, call back to a previous episode, series actually, where we walked through the evangelism, right? Sharing the gospel, sharing your testimony. And it's not, I believe this because mom and dad believe it. It's because they've actually wrestled with it on their own.
And then comes the celebration piece, right? There should be some kind of ceremony or gathering that marks this transition for them, where they see that now there's new privileges, now there's new expectations, now there's new roles within the family.
Can you just send them out into the woods with a rifle by themselves and they can't come back unless they're dragging a deer behind them.
In a little jar, or maybe even like you remember the old camera film?
Yeah.
Like one of those with peanut butter.
And that's all the food they got.
That's it. So they have to survive.
Okay.
And then if they make it back, you celebrate, right?
Okay. But by skinning the deer and cooking it. We probably just lost some listeners over that.
The celebration is a healthy thing, right? Because so often we just let adulthood happen by default, right? Like one day they're 16 with a curfew, and then the next day they're 18, and then now like they're an adult, right? But you haven't actually renegotiated anything. You've just stopped enforcing the old rules, and there's no intentional handoff.
Yeah, so this milestone says, let's make this intentional. Let's name it. Let's celebrate it. Let's say you are stepping into something new. You are a man. You are a woman, right? You are leading because you're an adult now. And here's what that means for how we relate to each other now, even though you're still living under my roof, but you now as an adult are making your own adult decisions.
And that brings us to the 6th milestone, which is probably one of my favorite ones on this whole list, right? Because it's so close to what we do every day in our roles as educators. But this milestone is about graduation and apologetics.
Yeah, and that's a really clear one, right? Because, you finish 12th grade, and assuming you passed all your classes, you will graduate. You have a ceremony, it's all there. And then from that, they have to decide. Are they going into college? Are they going into the workforce? Are they going into the military? Are they taking a gap year? Great plug. You can actually link some of those together and like go to Word of Life Bible Institute we've talked to before, and you can get some biblical training, and it's like a gap year program, and you still get college credit, and it's awesome. But, those are decisions, and you're preparing your child to stand firm in their faith when they launch this direction.
And here's the important thing to know as a parent, because if you're honest with yourself, your kid is about to walk into an environment, whether that's a college campus, whether that's a job site, whether they're going into the barracks, wherever they land, they're going to go to a place that is going to challenge everything they believe. And it's not going to happen politely. It's going to happen aggressively. It's going to be in your face. And all of a sudden, everything you've done at home is going to be questioned. Everything they've learned in church, everything they've learned maybe at a Christian school, it's going to be challenged, and they're going to be faced with it without you being there, without their youth pastor being there, without their Bible teacher being there.
Yeah, and sometimes it's actually not even aggressively and in your face. We've talked about that before. Some of the most insidious attacks come in very sneakily and underhanded, and it's that current that starts sweeping them away as their roommate questions something that they believe. It's not a, hey, you're a crazy lunatic. It's just a, really? You still do that? Or, well, why don't we just go do this other thing? It's ideas like that. And if the first time they encounter some of these hard questions and hard decisions about their faith and their standards is in a dorm room at 18 with no framework for how to think through those decisions, they're in a very vulnerable position.
And so what this milestone does, right, is it creates this practice about intentional apologetics training, helping them learn why they believe what they believe, and not just what we believe, but why we believe it, and how to answer tough questions, how to engage the culture with grace and truth. And those are very important, right? They go together.
Yeah, and this actually ties back again to another episode that we've done about big questions and having a rigorous faith and resilient logic. And if your teenager hasn't heard those or you haven't listened to it, it's a great time to go back and listen to them. And you can even listen to some of these together. So, I feel like our whole podcast, right, Equipped for Impact, is giving you the tools for this, right? And so there's a lot of callbacks in this episode, but that's really important for you. You can go back. We've got these resources you can listen to again as you are trying to set your child up for this milestone, because it's a big one.
And we've done this so long now, 68 episodes. 68 episodes that a lot of what we're telling you now, you can find in one of those episodes.
Yep.
We've talked about some of the great voices to read, like Sean McDowell. We've talked about resources like the Colson Center and John Stone Street and what he puts out. And so,
Breakpoint podcast,
yes,
I know we're great at plugging other podcasts too. Breakpoint is a great one where they take, everyday, like real relevant today news and look at it from a biblical worldview.
And so give your teenager the exposure to sharp, faithful thinkers who've already wrestled with some of these questions.
Right. And then celebrate. It's graduation, right? That's your celebration. And so just pair your celebration on top of what your school is already doing. And this is where parents, formally come on and bestow this, this framework, the mantle that they're launching their son or daughter out into the world, even if they are still technically living under your roof for a little bit while longer, it's a launch. And so celebrate that and pass the mantle.
And I love that language, right, of passing the mantle or launching it, because you're not just saying, hey, good luck out there, right? It's you as parents standing in front of your child and saying, we've poured everything we have into you, and now we are releasing you. Now we are launching you. We're not moving you away from the faith, but we're putting you into your own ownership of it.
Yeah, and that can be a very powerful moment if you do it intentionally. So it's a moment worth planning. Don't just let that graduation season come upon you, caps and gowns and open houses and graduation parties and all the things, right? But build in a moment, even a small one, where you can intentionally speak that blessing into your child's heart. So that brings us to our last milestone number 7. And this is the final one, and it's just a lifetime in Christ, right? And Lewis, this one's different from the others, right?
Yeah, and it's because there's no single event that's tied to this one, right? There's no dedication service, there's no baptism, there's no road trip, there's no ring, there's no graduation ceremony. This milestone is the fruit of every milestone that came before it.
Yeah, and the goal is that your child is now an adult living out an enduring, multiplying faith. And you think about it, you have hopefully passed your faith on to your child. They own it. And then now this is the time as an adult. They get married.
Yeah.
They have their own kids. You get to go into the grandparent stage, right? You don't stop parenting your child. It's just a different type of parenting as colleagues, as equals, because they're an adult and you're still walking with them and encouraging them in this lifetime of faith.
And that's really cool, right? Because now we get to see the practice of what we poured into them. It's watching your adult child, walk as an active disciple maker. And I'm at that weird stage now in my life where like my daughters are getting older. And so my wife and I, we start to have conversations about what we want to be like as grandparents one day, right? 2 of my favorite episodes, Nate, were when we had your mom on for the Mother's Day episode.
Yep.
And then, or was it the grandparents? Day?
Yep.
And then I think we had your dad on for an episode as well.
It was the same episode.
Was it the same
mom
together?
And dad together for their grandparents episode.
That was one of my favorite episodes because it was really cool just kind of seeing how they had invested in your life and in the lives of your brothers. And then now they were able to walk alongside of you with your children.
Right.
And that was really cool.
And all 15 of their grandchildren.
So if you haven't listened to that episode, highly, highly, highly recommend it. But now...
Should we just name this episode the callback episode?
The callback episode.
Yep.
Man, we've done so many good episodes. I think they're good.
This is the phase where, like, if you listen to podcasts who are new, which I feel like we're still fairly new, we're a year and a half into this.
Year and a half, yeah.
And at this point, like, people start running out of things to talk about.
Yeah.
And because they've talked about it all. And so then they go back and start rehashing some of the things.
Yeah.
So if you've got ideas of what you want us to talk about, podcast@waynechristian.org. Send us an email. We want to cover new stuff, and we're going to keep going as long as we can. So I think here, I think this is worth zooming out now that we've covered all 7 of these milestones and just reminding ourselves of the whole framework we've talked through these last 2 episodes, right? Everything from the dedication to the profession of faith, the adolescence conversations and all the awkwardness there, stewardship, apologetics, and just launching in. None of these milestones are a goal in and of themselves.
Yeah, they were all pointing somewhere.
Yeah, and it's to this last one, right? To an adult who doesn't just believe things about God, but actually lives a life that is shaped by Him, and then who can turn around and pour that same faith into somebody else, right? And someday their own children, a friend, somebody that they mentor, somebody at work, whatever it is, they are practicing the Great Commission as an adult who is bringing glory to God.
Yeah, and what's really cool is that this allows us to be able to help them understand the truth, right? They know what they believe and why. They also know that the truth has actually shaped who they are. It has shaped their character. It's shaped their habits. And then now the mission continues because it doesn't stop with them. Now they're carrying it forward to somebody else, and you get to see the fruit of your labor as a parent in their lives as they become parents, and now hopefully do the same thing with their children.
Yeah. And so, this is a great like parenting arc. That's what we want to see. And it's really what comes out in the Bible, right? Deuteronomy 6 of passing this on to your children. You go to, 1st and 2nd Timothy talking about, teaching faithful men who will teach others also, and seeing Timothy, the faith that was in his mother and grandmother and was passed on to him. And so you spend 18 plus years pouring into your child's life, hoping it takes root, trusting that God is going to bring the fruit in your child's life, and then you release them into their own mission.
Nate, I was on an Instagram doom scroll recently, and I came across this very morbid reel. And
let's just pause and note that was a really weird transition, because we went from like launching your child to like an Instagram doom scroll that was morbid. But I'm trusting that you're going to take us someplace.
I'm going to connect
Okay.
I'm going to connect here. So the reel said something to the effect, and I don't remember exactly how it was phrased, but it said, there will come a point in time when someone will remember you for the last time. And like I read that and I was like, wow, that's so true. Like at some point, the people that knew you, had a memory of you, they'll all pass on, and nobody will exist that knew you.
Yep.
So as I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking about this connection here, right? If you do it right and you do this process and it takes root in the life of your children, there may be people 30, 40, 50, 100 years from now who have no memory of you as a person, but the legacy of what you did in the lives of your children is still being passed on to the next generation. Like, it reminds me of the book of Joshua, where it says that a generation arose that did not know the Lord, right? Like, as parents, let's make it our goal to make sure that we pass on the Lord to our children, and then they pass it on to their children, and they pass it on to their children. And even though there may come a time when nobody remembers you anymore, you're still making an impact in the lives of generations you'll never see.
Yeah, I was actually reading in my quiet time this morning, and we're in Psalm 37, and it was at the end of the psalm, and this is what it said. The psalmist writes, I think it's David. He says, I have seen a wicked, ruthless man spreading himself like a green laurel tree, but he passed away, and behold, he was no more. Though I sought him, he could not be found. Mark the blameless and behold the upright, for there is a future for the man of peace, right? And so he's making that contrast of like, you see this person who seems like they're flourishing now, but as soon as they pass away, there's nothing left, right? Yeah. But a righteous person, blameless, they're making that investment in the next generation, right? And so you will see their influence through the generations. And the Bible's full of those pictures. So that's what we're going towards. So let's bring this all together, right? We've got the milestones, 7 of them going from, baby dedication to the profession of faith, adolescence, adulthood, a lifetime in Christ. It's, these different milestones, but it's one long, beautiful journey.
And don't get overwhelmed by the big picture, right?
Yep.
You don't need to have all 7 of these figured out today. Look at where your child is right now. Figure out which milestone is right in front of you and just start there.
That's right. You're planting seeds now through your everyday rhythms, those dinner conversations, car rides, bedtime prayers, whatever stage of life you're in, right? That's where discipleship is actually happening. And those mark what's been growing in your child's life this whole time.
Spiritual formation was never meant to be an overnight event. Right? It's a long walk of discipleship that happens right there in your home, one ordinary day at a time.
That's right. So Lewis, any last encouragement to the parents listening right now as we wrap up this little mini-series?
Well, hopefully if you're listening, you've had a chance to listen to both episodes, and you might even be feeling the weight of everything that we've covered. And so let me just encourage you with this. You're not doing this alone, and you were never supposed to. trust that God is with you in this. Your church community is meant to walk alongside you in this. And every small step, every faithful step you take today is planting something that is going to shape generations after you. And so don't underestimate the ordinary moment. That's where the legacy is built.
That's great. So thank you all for listening to Equipped for Impact. If these episodes encouraged you, please share it with another parent who could use it. We love it when people find this podcast because a parent friend shared it with them. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss our next episode where we are doing our back to school episode. It's that time of year. The school. You done your school supply shopping?
We did it this past weekend.
Have
you done yours?
We have. Yes,
right.
We did. But until then, keep leading the next generation to stand firm in their faith and influence the world for Christ.